To call to order the July 21st, 2021 meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We'll start with introductions. Nick, if you'd start, please.
Nick Codner, I'm the building inspector and zoning administrator.
Laurie Gandia, Associate Planner.
Irene Macarelli, alternate member.
Neil Dunn, voting member.
Jackie Bernard, voting member.
Suzanne Brunel, voting member.
Mitch Feig, alternate member.
As far as the procedures here, what will happen with the meetings is a clerk, Mitch and Suzanne, are you splitting it, or Mitch is the clerk? We'll read the record in, the case into the record. Typically, the applicant will come up and make their presentation. The board will address the applicant with any questions or concerns. At that point, we'll go out to the audience, and those in favor are given the opportunity to get up and speak. And then it will come back to the board. After that, we'll go back out to the audience, and those opposed or with questions can get up and speak. All questions and comments are coming through the board. It's not between anybody in the audience and any of the applicants. It's coming through the board. All you're speaking, please. And then after that, people with opposition or, excuse me, or questions, excuse me, speak, then the applicant will have a chance to try to address those questions or concerns. Come back to the board. The board will finalize any questions or thoughts we have, and then we'll go into deliberations. Typically in deliberations, it's closed for public input at that point. Occasionally, we will open up and go back out to the public for clarification or go back out to the applicant. So if you wish to speak, you need to come up to a microphone on one of the corners. Beth, are you still doing big nights? Are you doing any sign-up? There'll be a pad there if you're going to speak, your name and, first you state your name and address, and also to help Beth with everything here, she'll give you something to write your name and address on. If you have cell phones, please turn them off or put them on vibrate, please. And if you're not up to staying late tonight, because it looks like it could be a late night, you can go home and watch the determinations on television, or you can call the planning department in the morning. As far as that goes, because there is a possibility it could run late, it's at the board's discretion to continue cases for an overflow date. Typically around 9 or 10, we evaluate where we're at and what we want to do. The follow-up date will be August 5th, 2021, if we do go to an overflow date. This will be the only notice you get about that follow-up meeting. It won't be re-noticed in the newspaper. And from there, I'd like to appoint Renee and Mitch as voting members tonight, and then we have minutes to approve. Does anybody have a motion on the minutes?
I was not here.
None of us were here.
So it appears that only Renee and I were here last month for the minutes. Irene, I'm sorry.
Hold off on. Okay.
We'll hold off on the minutes. Any regional impact determinations by the planning board?
We do, we have many. We have case number 721-2021-1, request for 4 variances from LGO 4.33A1 to encroach 35 feet into a 60-foot front setback, 433A.2 to encroach 5 feet into the 30-foot side setback, 4.33B1 to encroach 37.7 feet into the 15-foot green perimeter, and 4.33B1 to encroach 30 feet into the 30-foot front perimeter green landscaping buffer, 213 Rockingham Road, map 15, lot 23-1, zone C1, Gagnon Family Trust owner and Paula Gagnon applicant. Case number 721-2021-2, request for a variance from 4.3.3.B to reduce the required 33 green landscaping area to 11. That's 103 Nashua Road, map 6, lot 35-17, zone C-1. Rabad Pizza LLC owner and Renegades Pub North applicant. Case number 721-2021-3, request for a variance from LZO 4.3.3.A.1 to encroach 32.2 feet into the front setback for an addition. That is again 103 Nashua Road, map 6, lot 35-17, zone C1, Rivard Pizza LLC owner and Renegades Pub North applicant. Case number 721, 2021-4, request for a variance from LGO 4.1.2 use table to allow a restaurant use in the industrial 2 zone, which is otherwise prohibited, 49 Harvey Road, map 14, lot 44-5, zoned industrial 2, Lexar Realty LLC owner and Pipe Dream Brewing LLC applicant. Case number 721, 2021-5, request for a variance from LGO 4.1.2 use table to allow a daycare use in the agricultural residential zone, which is otherwise prohibited, 40 Mammoth Road, map 1, lot 43, zoned AR1, Mac and Families LLC owner and applicant. In case number 721, 2021-6, request for a variance from LZO 7.8.b to encroach 5 feet plus or minus into the side setback for the construction of a sign, 18 Orchard View Drive, map 7, lot 40-12, zone C1, STG Realty Associates LLC, owner and applicant. Staff recommends that the board find all these projects are not developments of regional impact, as they do not meet any of the criteria set forth by the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept. I'll second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No regional impact. All right. Whoever's reading first, case
Yes.
number 1, please.
Case number 519-2021-4 is a request for a special exception pursuant to LZO 5.15.1 for a portable storage structure in the AR1 district at 136 Pillsbury Road, map 6, lot 18-2, zoned AR1. Orchard Christian Fellowship Church is the owner and the applicant. That has been withdrawn by the applicant for this evening.
Thank you. So we need nothing on that then, Laura, correct?
Nope, that is all.
Second case.
Second case, please.
Case number 61621-1 is a request for 4 variances from LZO 7.7E3 to allow a changeable electronic message board sign that is otherwise prohibited. Number 2, 7.5C to allow a sign 16 feet in height where only 10 feet in height are allowed. Number 3, 7.6D3B to allow an additional wall sign where only 1 is permitted. And 4, 7.6D3A1 to allow a freestanding sign to be located 4 feet from the Nashua Road property line where 15 feet are required, and 2 feet from the Ella Road property line where 15 feet are required. 7 Nashua Road, map 10, lot 129, zone C2, RGGS Realty, Inc. is the owner, and New Hampshire Signs the applicant.
Who'll be presenting, or did you want, we'll let them
Bear
get it.
with me, we may have some previous zoning here.
We read all the previously, so do we need to go through that again?
Just note that the case is.
Does that help, Suzanne?
Yes.
I guess before you get started, or as you're setting up, I think the board had asked for more information on the previous variances, because they seemed to come up last month. Did we have any more information on?
Yes. They were granted variance back in 68 to build a station, and then back in 96, they received the first variance for the freestanding sign. That was allowed to be with closer than 15 feet and 66 square feet. But then back in 2006, they were granted a variance to locate their sign 10 feet from the front property line. Oh, nope, that one was withdrawn. All right, they were granted a variance to have their sign 4 feet off of Nashua Road and 2 feet off Ella. in 2006, it was granted.
Yeah, it was
So
denied prior
10.
to it.
10 feet from the front property line and 5 feet from the side property line where 15 feet is required. So it's 10 and 5.
Most recent
Well, that
one.
was withdrawn by the applicant.
2006,
Right,
yeah,
I think it-
yeah.
So the most recent variance case allowed them to have the setback as they are requesting for today.
And, right, and what was the square footage of the sign at that time?
32 square feet.
What was the answer?
32.
32.
And for clarity, what is the proposed sign again?
It's 28. I'm not talking, I can introduce myself.
Is it 24 square feet?
Good evening, my name is Peter March, New Hampshire Signs, 66 Gold Ledge Avenue, Auburn, New Hampshire. Current sign is 38 square feet. We're asking for 48 square feet where we are allowed 65 square feet.
Could you say that one more time, please?
We are requesting 48 square feet, where we currently have 38 square feet, but we are allowed 65 square feet. I have the decision from 2006. I don't see anything in the variance that refers to the side size. The decision was on the setback alone. Did not relate to anything to side size. And I have that, the minutes if you want to see them.
No, I think the setback was fine. I think what we got into last month was the fact that the sizes were all over the place, and you're saying you're allowed 65 square feet. Normally, that would be correct if it was complying with all setbacks and every other regulation.
Yes.
Which it doesn't, and you did, so you're still under the premise of that supposedly the 32 square feet was the last one that you were allowed. and
Again-
So you're asking for 48, the existing one's 38, and you had a bunch of other signage. So that's where I think some of the confusion came from.
I don't, of the variances were granted, the 1968 one was granted with restrictions. We're unable to find out what those restrictions are. The 1996 one, which Mr. Codner referred to, was a no-show, so that one didn't happen. The 1996 one was granted with restrictions, so that was a setback one. However, that was superseded by the 2006 one. The other one was related to the canopy, not the sign. There was one that was denied in 2002 for a setback of 4 foot and 2 foot. That was superseded by the 2006 one. And then the other 2006, 315, was withdrawn, and that was set back as well. So to my estimation, the only relevant variance is the one from 2006, which does not mention the size of the sign in my reading of it.
It's mentioned in the minutes. Larry O'Sullivan, I think we need to answer Ms. Brownell's comments about the size. If it's presented as a 4 by 8, they put something larger than 4 by 8, they'll be required to take it down.
Thank you. So, since most of you weren't here last month, I presume you've read the case and all the information. Basically, what we were stuck on, or where we ended up, if you read through the minutes, is that we needed more clarity on the size because they keep getting bigger and bigger. So, with that said, if you want to, I know there was also some stuff came up last month about some clutter on the sign. So have you readdressed any of that? Have you thought about any of that, or you're still sitting here looking for 48 square feet, I guess?
Yes, we're looking for 48 square feet. I disagree with Mr. Codner. I can't find anywhere in the decision that the size is limited to 32 square feet.
It was in the minutes, and the minutes are part of the meeting. It's why we have public meetings now and why half of them are
Understand.
recorded and have minutes. We can't capture everything in the final little summary at the end of a decision. So any questions from the board? We're now looking at, they're submitting for 48 square feet for a sign that was originally granted 32, is existing at 38. And I don't know if you look in the packet or on the computer, you'll see that there's, what they're proposing has what I called some clutter that makes it bigger. And there's also issues with pulling into the drive at this area. The sign is a little bit wider, and it's wider down lower. And it's a very narrow pathway into the gas station or store or whatever, both, I guess. So that's what led me to get the final sizing. So I guess that anybody on the board have any questions on what you've read and what's transpired?
Yeah, Nick, do we know, was 32 what was required at the states? Like, why did they, if larger signs were allowed, why did do we have any clarity on why we settled on 32?
I don't know, I don't know how they ended up with the 38 square foot sign when they were told they could only have 32.
But was the size issue different in the zoning regulations back then? Or why would we have done 32 if a larger sign was allowed?
They had a discussion about the different shapes of the sizes and the height. They were going from a round sign to a rectangular sign, and they were concerned about the height of the sign. They didn't want it to be any lower to the ground. And I don't know why they decided on 32, but that's what they stipulated.
Mr. Figg, may I present the actual minutes of the decision of that meeting?
Nick, do you know where in the minutes? Oh, yeah.
Page 5, right in the middle of the page where Larry O'Sullivan. Says, I think we need to answer Miss Brownell's comment about the size.
Okay, yeah, I see. Well, that's not bad, I think it's right there.
Anybody else need to see it?
I'd like to see it, please.
That's where you can see it. Okay, this is it.
Do you want to repeat that, Irene? Any other questions from the board?
I don't have any at this time.
No. No.
So I'm looking at it, that size and the way, where it's located, that there's concerns about vehicles hitting it. And what you've done from what was originally there is you've pulled it down and extended the lower portion of it into what is essentially the entryway, the entrance to the lot. And I think that's without full discussion in those minutes. I was hoping there'd be more on it, but everybody was quite pleased that it was going to be smaller and it was the 32 square feet. And it's probably because of that lack of setback.
But Mr. Chairman, the existing size is 38 square feet. It must be a legal sign, otherwise there would be an enforcement action against it.
Not
And-
necessarily. I mean, we don't go around measuring every sign unless somebody sees it or complains. Just because it's there, but there's no variance to back it up. But now we're getting to the 48, and that's more my point that carried over to this month is now you're encroaching into this area that to me looks like a sensitive and a safety issue. You've lowered the sign that was more notched or out of the drive entrance, and you're gonna have cars and trucks going in there, and I guess that's where I'm having trouble with the 48
Would you
square
be
feet.
prepared to agree to 38 square feet, the size that the sign is currently? And to do that, we would pull the setback, we would make the size on the side of the sign equivalent to the smallest size that it currently is.
I think if, that would be more, it would not meet the variance that was granted, but I think that was something we would all consider. I'm still not sure about the synergy thing. It seems to me to be cluttering, and so I don't know. So
I think
you would-
to make it 38 square feet, we would lose the synergy component.
So is the suggestion that you want to change the location?
No, we're not able to change the location. The height has to basically remain what it is to keep it A, visible, but B, out of the power lines. So we would like to keep the overall height. I'm able to shrink it sideways to bring it to 38 square feet, which would be something equivalent to the regular and full sign on the side there. It certainly would not exceed the setback on that side, on the actual, on the road side, on the Nashua Road side, to achieve that 38 square feet.
And so then what are your overall dimensions? You're gonna pull it up a little and get rid of synergy and you get to
I
the
would get rid of
38?
synergy, reduce the size to 38 square feet, and make sure that the Nashua Road side of the sign does not encroach further than the regular and full price sign that is there now. In other words, the entire sign would basically have a setback that actually would be greater than was required, because it would actually follow that line, not the mobile sign.
What basis would we change what was previously approved?
So that's a good question. So, did we change the setback? No, so the case
Yes,
is.
you would change the setback, because the setback measures off the mobile, not off the price sign, not off the existing price sign.
But the last variance was 4 and 2, and we're still at
Yes.
4 and 2.
No, you'd be less than 4 and 2 with if you agreed to that condition. The top sign is 6 foot wide. The bottom sign is 5 foot wide, okay? So the 6 inches, I beg your pardon, on the side of the price sign. So in other words, it would reduce the setback by 6 inches. It would maintain the 38 square feet, and it would lose the synergy.
Do we reduce the setback by how much?
6 inches. I'm sorry, we would increase the setback by 6 inches.
Right.
Off Nashua Road. It would have no effect on Ella.
So do we need clarity, Nick, for you as far as enforcement? If we were to approve it, do we need to change the setback to 2'6"?
Well, that's up to you guys if you want to grant them that variance. I don't see a problem.
So the reason we're here is because normally, I guess the variance had it covered, but I guess you were encroaching more and you wanted.
No,
more size.
we were maintaining the setback that was granted in the variance
And so you were in
on the
front of
original
us.
application. I'm now proposing that we increase the setback by 6 inches.
Okay, and so that works, and that's only for section 4. So there's actually 4 variances on this
Yep.
case. So number 4 goes to,
Would you like me to discuss the individual points?
again, in a general swipe at all 4 variances, or
I'm happy to do it whichever way.
well, no, we did that last month, and if everybody's read the cases, that's fine. So we don't need to go down that road necessarily. So we basically just now spoke about,
Number 4.
number 4. So I guess the first variance, it gets back to the electronic message board, which we've all went through. So does anybody have any questions on that?
No.
So then if we go down to number 2, to allow a sign 16 feet in height where only 10 feet is allowed. Your existing sign is 16?
Right, we're maintaining the existing height. The reason we want to maintain the existing height is firstly to prevent traffic as much as we can from hitting the bottom of the sign. But also we're getting close to power lines if we go much above that. So that's the reason for that height request. And it is the existing height, so there's no change to that.
Any questions on that from anyone?
No.
No, but
So then number 3 is to allow an additional wall sign. Where only one is permitted. Any questions on that?
That's the convenience store sign.
Correct,
So you've got 2 mobile signs and 1 convenience store sign.
correct. The mobile signs are necessary to identify the actual mobile offering. And they're necessary from either end of from whichever way you approach the site. The C-store is a separate offering. It's not a separate business, but it's a separate suite of products, if you like. The reason that C-stores are more and more important is that gas volumes in general are projected to decline very rapidly over the next 15 years due to the advent of things like electric cars and hybrids. C-stores are much more important to gas stations than they were, say, 10 years ago. Hence, if you drive down 102, you'll see a number of operations like 7-Eleven, a number of operations like Naria in Auburn on 28, and Cumberland Farms is the sort of standard bearer for it. The C-store has become more important than the gas station, and having signage is really critical to that C-store. In this particular case, the C-store is really hidden behind the canopy, and it's necessary.
Darren, I got
I beg your pardon?
I understand, I'm well-versed with the store.
Thank
so
you.
We're good. But, so the two mobile signs that were just up, that are sort of on the banners there, are the other two signs we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
And those were permitted, those are legally permitted, so those are up. So this is the additional sign we're looking for.
And may I ask one question?
Oh, you can ask all you want.
On this convenience store sign, will it have the same lighting hours as the mobile?
Yes.
Okay, so when the mobile goes out, because what are the operating hours for that one,
I
roughly?
think they're 5 to 11, 6 to 11, something like
So
that.
that other additional sign on the store will be
Correct.
off?
Whenever the mobile signs are off, that
That will
sign
go
will
off?
be off as
Okay,
well. Yeah.
thank you.
And we have no issue with the size of that C-store sign? We're just looking for,
21 square feet, it would be allowed if it wasn't the third sign.
So it's not allowed. Any other questions? All right. Anyone in the audience in favor of this variance that would like to speak? Seeing none, anyone in the audience opposed or with questions about this variance that would like to get up and speak or ask a question? Seeing none, back to the board.
Good.
Good?
I think I'm good.
Good. Thank you. We'll go into deliberations.
Do you have the paperwork for that one?
there's some paperwork. Oh,
It's the signature sheet and the rationale there or whatever.
hang on, you got 4 of these.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Property setback, sign height, wall add. This one.
Thank you.
Looks like we started.
1, 2, 3.
It's electronic.
Okay.
Start with number 1.
Additional rules. Okay. All right, so this one was started for
Electronic message
the
board.
electronic message board. It looks like it went all the way through.
It got that far, and I think that's where we asked for some clarity, because they were starting to overlap each other, and
Okay.
the rationale was if they're going bigger there, is it gonna impact the rest of the thing without knowing what was transpiring on the side, the actual size? So at that point, we asked for more information.
Okay. Do we have to go through the findings of all 5 from that?
It's
Reread them?
because we have new voters here, if we can
Okay.
read them, and you can see if you agree or not, and we can, then the vote was never made,
Okay,
so.
okay. So we'll start with the first one. Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest because it was recorded that granting the variance would not. It does not change the essential characters of the neighborhood. 2, the spirit of the ordinance would or would not be observed because it was found and recorded as the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because for the same reasons as the first question, it does not change the essential characters of the neighborhood. 3, granting the variance would or would not do substantial justice because it was recorded as granting the variance would do substantial justice because the loss to the applicant is greater than the gain to the general public. 4, for the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties would or would not be diminished. It was recorded. For the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished because the area is all commercial and the property is similar to all other properties in that area. 5, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because A1, there is or is not a there is or is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because it is recorded. There is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because the property has multiple setbacks and other properties in the area. And has an electronic message board. A2, the proposed use is or is not a reasonable one because it is recorded the proposed use is a reasonable one because the signage is necessary for the business. The comments, restrictions, including any timeframe conditions, are recorded as such. The electronic message board is only for digits and only for gas stations. The electronic sign will be non-scrolling and non-flashing.
Any thoughts or changes or disagreements?
I would just on two, sort of repeating what number 1 was, I would go with more on the health, safety, and welfare. It seems like they sort of just doubled up on the not changing the
Sound good?
character of the area.
I
Otherwise,
agree.
That all makes sense.
And I didn't quite, I know this is difficult, but I didn't quite follow what 5A1 was.
Multiple setbacks that other properties didn't have, that other properties in the neighborhood had electronic signs.
Oh,
We're
okay.
right-
Because all the other gas
Okay, I
stations.
got it, yeah. That's, I thought that's what it should be, I just didn't get that.
You hesitated,
It confused
just
me.
reading what was there.
I had a hard time reading it
Okay. I'm good
because
then.
it's all handwritten.
You're lucky it wasn't my writing,
Yeah,
it was
you're lucky it
Brendan's.
wasn't
Yeah. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for case number 616-2021-1 to approve the first request for a variance, LZO 7.7E.3, to allow a changeable electronic message board sign that is otherwise prohibited.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yep.
The conditions, I know you read them, Jackie, was that to be part of your motion? Those conditions that are listed on that sheet.
Any conditions for that
Yeah,
one?
that's right. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for case number 616-2021-1. Yep.
You already made the motion. You said it in your thing, I just want the record to be clear that those were.
With
That the conditions are
With
included.
also to include the following restrictions, that the electronic message board is only for digits and only for gas stations, and the electronic sign will be non-scrolling and non-flashing.
I'll second that one.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
You ready? We got 3 more to go here.
Where is this one?
Granted, did you want to read that, or the clerk read it? I forget
Yeah, the
now.
clerk does.
Can we save all these to the end? Can we save the decisions on these to the end? Or are we gonna go one by one?
I'm not following your question.
For the voting, because we have 4 separate, 4 separate voting sheets, so we should read them in now or at the end.
You should take each one.
Each one, yeah,
Okay.
so.
Request for the first variance, 773E, to allow a changeable electronic sign board that is otherwise prohibited was allowed 5-0. Granted, it's only for digits, a gas station, I'm not sure what that says, non-scrolling and non-flashing.
All right, so the second one, which is 7.5.c, to allow a sign 16 feet in height where only 10 feet is allowed. 1, granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest.
This was not reported.
No, this was nothing else was recorded.
I would say would not, same rationale as last time.
I would
It's
agree.
not going to change the essential character of the neighborhood, it's commercial in nature.
We're not?
Would not?
I agree.
And I would also add that it's public safety, so, because it needs to be higher there.
Well, that would be number 2, but okay,
We're good on
It could
that.
be both.
it can be both.
What did you say, Suzanne, for yours? I want to word it correctly.
It doesn't change the essential character of the neighborhood.
The spirit of the ordinance would or would not be observed?
Would.
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 Yeah.
It's your safety issue.
Safety issue for me. Any others? Okay. Granting the variance would or would not do substantial justice?
Would.
It would.
Would?
Would. Reasoning?
It's replacing an existing sign that, in a congested area. I mean, I don't know. The loss to the
You're
applicant.
balancing it out. It's
Yeah.
no injury to the public and it will benefit the applicant.
For the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties would or would not be diminished?
Would not.
Would not.
Would not.
I mean, it's a commercial area. Having nice new signs probably can't hurt.
And surrounding properties are the same.
That's you.
Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because there is or is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because
There's not, I mean, I think, again, this is replacing existing signs and, in a commercial area.
Suzanne?
I agree.
Agree.
Okay. The proposed use is or is not a reasonable one?
Signs are reasonable.
Is,
Reasonable. It's-
do we have any comments, restrictions, or time frame?
And what has the, it has a normal 2-year time frame, right?
To exercise,
Pardon me?
2 years to exercise.
I'm
Do we
good.
have any restrictions?
Section 2 to
Or
16 feet
comments?
high.
Are we good with that? Self-explanatory?
Good.
Okay, so we have none. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for case number 616-2021 on the second request for a variance for 7.5 to allow a sign 16 feet in height where only 10 feet in height is allowed, to accept that variance, to grant it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second again.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
On case number 616-2021-1, request for a variance from LZO 75C to allow a sign 16 feet in height where only 10 feet in height is allowed. Is granted, 5-0.
Okay, we are on the third one, 7.6.D.3.B, to allow an additional wall sign where only one is permitted. Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest because,
Would not.
Would not.
Irene? Would not? In agreement?
Well, made by 3, so 24 square feet. Everybody's good with the size?
Did you say 24 was that one? I had written down
That-
21, but,
It's presented as 24.
oops,
Well, 3 by 8.
okay.
Just giving you that so you can use it again.
Oh, okay.
Would not be, due to the clarity of the business? Would not be.
Okay,
Character, no, that's second one.
yeah.
No, that's the first one.
What should give you?
Safety, welfare,
Or number 1, right?
yeah.
It would not.
We all agreed would not, we just need to,
Oh, it's not going to alter the essential character of the neighborhood by adding another sign to identify the convenience store, my
Okay, we-
opinion.
we all agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
The spirit of the ordinance would or would not be observed?
Would?
Would.
Would. And collective reasoning,
Same rationale as last time.
and it would allow identifiable gas station versus convenience store. So safety to get to where you need to go. Granting the variance would or would not do substantial justice.
Wood,
Wood,
Similar, injury to the public, benefit to the applicant of advertising the other.
I agree.
Yes, I agree.
And for the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties would or would not be diminished.
would not?
Would not? You all agree? Commercial area surrounding of the properties are the same?
Yep.
Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because, one, there is or is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because,
Of its original configuration.
so there is,
Well, it's, yeah.
there is not due to its original
Well,
configuration?
I'd say that only because it's been such a tight little area in there for so long. I don't know what we call that typically. Usually we say it has corners and corner lots impact it and all that, but
It's
it's a pretty
unique.
small area that's pretty tight, so,
So we all agree there is not.
Correct.
All right. It's replacing the existing sign, but in a unique way.
Well, it's not, this is adding the sign.
Or actually adding, I'm sorry, adding
on this one, yeah.
on this one is the,
It's a tough visibility area with the corner and everything. And so
there's
much
a lot going on right there in a small
Yeah.
postage stamp size area. Identification of store,
Yeah, there's poor visibility there,
yep.
just due to the size of the lot.
High traffic, poor visibility.
The proposed use is or is not a reasonable one? Is,
Is,
signs are reasonable. Do I have any comments, restrictions?
I guess so that it's in the record, we want to make sure not to exceed 24 square feet.
Any others?
You'd indicated the lighting that would go off at the same time that the rest of the lighting is. Is that a concern? It's an industrial, I mean, a commercial area, so I don't know, that's a great concern.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion on case 616-2021 on the third item, 7.6.d.3.b, to allow an additional wall sign where only one is permitted with
Oops, sorry.
the restrictions that the sign not to exceed 24 square feet and that the illumination be the same as the gas station to grant the variance.
And do we mean gas station hours, and what if they go 24 hour? Do we care?
I don't.
I don't either.
I don't,
I don't.
So just gas station hours?
yep.
Do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? What a redundancy in these things, isn't there?
Old school handwriting. Case number 616-2021-1, request for variance from LZO 76D3B to allow an additional wall sign where only one is permitted was allowed, 5-0, so it is granted. The sign is not to exceed 24 square feet and the illumination to be the same as the gas station.
The fourth one and the last one for case 616-2021-1, the fourth items, fourth request for variance, 7.6.d.3.a.i to allow a freestanding sign to be located 4 feet from the Nashua Road property line where 15 feet are required, and 2 feet from the Ella Road property line where 15 feet are required. Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest because.
Are we changing the numbers on this one?
2.5, that's the 2.5 feet.
Correct, I just read it as it is, and we'll clarify it when we get down to the, I guess, the comments, maybe?
Well, I think we should be voting on what we're voting on.
Yeah, I'd say it should be 2.5 feet.
Okay, do we have it on record that the applicant
He-
stated it?
He agreed with it, yes.
Okay, so it's gonna be, so the freestanding sign will be located how many feet from Nashua Road property, for the record?
4 feet stays,
4
Okay.
foot 6 inches,
4'6".
4 foot 6 inches.
Ellis sign isn't changing.
The property line where 15 feet are required,
Stays 2 feet or
2 feet from Ella. So 4 foot 6,
as it was.
4 foot 6 from Nashua, 2 foot from Ella.
okay, and that stays the same, okay. All right. So for the record, it'll be 4 feet 6 inches from the Nashua property road and 2 feet from the Ella Road property. Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest.
Would not.
Would not?
Would not.
Same rationale as last time.
So public safety concerns and character of neighborhood.
Yes.
The spirit of the ordinance would or would not be observed.
Would?
Would, yeah.
Would. And safety issues addressed.
Yep. And this is the character of this neighborhood, too.
Granting the variance would or would do substantial justice.
Would,
Would?
Would. Greater gain to the applicant than the general public.
agreed.
And the loss to the,
Lost the general.
Loss to the general public. For the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties would or would not be diminished.
Would not,
Okay, would not. They are all the same types of properties.
yep,
look the same.
Essential character of the neighborhood.
unchanged, yep.
Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because, one, there is or is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because,
Is not.
is not,
It's not this late in the game.
okay.
If it was a brand-new lot.
And the proposed use is or is not a reasonable one?
Is
Is.
reasonable.
Signs are reasonable. All right, so comments and restrictions. So we're going to clarify that from the Nashua Road property line shall not be greater than 4 feet 6 inches. And 2 feet from the Ella Road side.
Correct.
Do I have any other comments that anyone needs on there?
No, this is
Okay.
strictly the setback.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to grant the
Oh, hold
var-
it, just a minute, I'm sorry.
I think the board had a lot of discussion about the size of the sign. Is that going to be noted anywhere?
Yeah, we should go to the 38 square feet. I guess you're right. I was thinking that was covered in the first electronic message board, but not necessarily. It would be here. Yes, I'll open it back up to you, Mr. Marsh.
Could you also put the condition you don't want synergy on it? You didn't want that synergy panel.
That helps your cause.
So if you would put that restriction, I need to show that to mobile, so I need to present that to mobile.
Is it mobile or Exxon? Because I see synergy on both signs.
It's Exxon Mobil, in fact.
I don't know that I like that. I just don't like us making a restriction like that. If they want to squeeze that on there, I don't. see-
Well, my concern with the size is they were making it much bigger because they're putting this clutter on there that synergy means nothing to me. And then I drive to Florida and I see Exxon and Mobil both using the same exact thing. So I don't see where that brings any value other than clutter. So eliminating that, I think they need it probably for the behalf of Mobil, who does not write our sign regulations, we do. And if that helps his cause, then I'm fine with that, but.
Right, I think you should know that it is clutter. I mean, that is part of our sign regulation, that we're
Exactly.
trying to reduce clutter, so.
I think if we noted that it's, that makes, I don't know, maybe we can note that
But
it's cluttered.
can we
Well,
point a
there's
finger?
there's concerns about free speech and all that,
Right.
but are
Why
we,
don't we not say that? Why don't we just say that they're only allowed to have the name of mobile and the electronic sign? Therefore, we are not really saying you can't have synergy, we're saying what you can have.
so we're not setting ourselves up for a First Amendment speech on a sign that is cluttered? That's fine with me. Does that work for you if we just say just
Shall only be mobile?
the mobile brand and,
Mobile,
and the,
identifying the business and price.
because there's concern that,
Yeah,
I
no, I
mean, it's
understand.
clutter. So our clutter, we can call it clutter, and synergy, if we're
I don't think it's.
If we're going
gonna-
after some trademark or name or somewhere, they're going down the road and they're putting it on every business unit they buy and they're trying to claim that, to us, that's clutter. So I don't know,
I doubt you're going to hear anything from the Exxon Mobil lawyers on that one. I think
well, that's not the point. There are concerns about, is that the concern, Laura, that,
There is
Yeah,
concern
it's a
about
concern.
saying anything about the word synergy. So if it's an extra text concern that provides clutter, that's different. So part of the, but I wouldn't pinpoint the word synergy at all.
maybe two components, maximum of two components, the price being one component and mobile being another one.
would
does
be-
that work for
that
you,
would be an
Nick?
appropriate restriction.
Two components, one being the price, one being the brand, and none of that other stuff? Is that good for Nick? Yeah. All right.
Just say it's how you say it, right?
Figure out how to write that.
Yeah. Which it'll be two components only, two components only, which shall be the brand and the pricing.
And then,
No greater than 38 square feet.
correct. Anything else?
Good?
Good.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion, for case 6/16/2021-1 on the last one, number 4, 7.6.d.3.a.i, to allow a freestanding sign to be located 4 feet 6 inches from the Nashua property road line where 15 feet are required and 2 feet from the Ella Road property line. To grant that variance with the following conditions. Nashua Road property line shall not be greater than 4 feet 6 inches and 2 feet from the Ella Road side. Also, the sign shall have only 2 components, which shall be 1, the brand, and 2, pricing. That shall not be greater than 38 square feet.
Is that less than 4.6? Nashua Road property line shall not be greater than. I guess that works. That work for everybody? Do we have a second?
A second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We should have a better way of doing this, huh?
That's my notes. People behind us cursing right now. Some people behind us cursing right now. Is that gonna be late this age?
Finally, on case number 6/16/2021-1, request for variance from LGO 76D3A1 to allow a freestanding sign to be located 4.6 feet from the Nashua property line where 15 feet are required and 2 feet from Ella Road property line where 15 feet is required, was granted with restrictions with the Nashua Road property property side being no greater than 4 feet 6 inches, and the Ella Road side 2 feet.
Yep.
And 2 components to the sign being the brand and pricing, not to exceed 38 square feet. It was granted 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, I think that should be less, not greater.
That's what I was thinking, but,
I would say, yeah.
do you want to edit your motion to less?
Well, it said not greater than. No greater than. Short road properly.
Well, it could be greater than it's setback. The less is correct.
You want less than.
We need to remotion it, or is that fine like that, Laura?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're done.
Thank you.
Complex.
Sorry, guys.
You good?
Ready for the next one?
Break.
Make it through the next one. If we get to the next one.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Case number 07/21/20 2021-1 is a request for 4 variances as well. Preliminary zoning ordinance 1, which is 4.3.3.8.1, to encroach 35 feet into the 60 front setback for an existing non-conforming building and a proposed addition. 2, 4.3.3.82, to encroach 5 feet into the 30-foot side setback for an existing non-conforming building. 3, 4.3.3.B.1, to encroach 13.7 feet into the 15-foot perimeter green landscaping buffer for a paved parking area. And 4, 4.3.3B.1, to encroach 30 feet into the 30-foot front perimeter green landscaping buffer for a paved parking area at 213 Rockingham Road, map 15, lot 23-1, zone C1. Gagny Family Trust is the owner, and Paula Gagny is the applicant.
Who will be presenting?
I will.
Was there cases? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
there were 2 previous
Sorry about
zonings. The variance was granted to construct a subdivision leaving lots with less than 150 feet of frontage and less than 1 acre. And the second that was granted with restrictions was a variance to locate temporary structures as modular homes for sale.
Who will be presenting?
Hi, my name is Carl Dubay with the Dubay Group. Also with me is Paula Gagnon. She owns the property. And also with her is Laura Dodge, an attorney with McLean, helping us out. And I'm going to go pretty quickly if you don't mind. And if you need to slow me down, just slow me down. So the project is on 213 Rockingham Road. You can see it on the graphic there behind you and also in your packets. Paula bought the property about a year ago and relocated her office there. And just to give you a sense of scale of the building you see there, that building, the existing portion of the building fronting the road, which is at the top of the sheet, is about the same size as this hearing room. So that building there, you see there, the existing building is the same. It could fit almost perfectly into this room, almost the same dimensions, just to give you a sense of scale. And that's her office building. And she'd like to expand that to the rear so she can accommodate some bathrooms and a conference room. So that's what the variance is all about, because in this zone, in the commercial zone, that little building used to be a house, and then it was an office, it was retail, it was recently a spa, and now it's a small office for Paula, and she'd like to expand the building to the rear. You won't see it from the road. It's well buffered from the abutters. So that's effectively one package of variances. And the other package of variances is what you see in the white there. That's the proposed parking rearrangement of an existing parking lot that's already there. Now, the existing parking lot has more pavement in it, and it actually expands existing pavement all the way over to the left alongside the abutting property line. So what we're going to do is remove pavement on that existing buffer sideline and put in some red maples and some other shrubs and that type of thing, and remove any pavement that's actually on top of the existing abutter property line that's been there for forever. So what we're doing here is expanding a very small building, a little office building to the rear, and you really won't see much of it from the road, if any. And we're also cleaning up the existing parking lot that's already out there that kind of extends into the side buffer area and the front buffer area. We're making that better. So we're really making this situation better, look better. Since Paula bought the property, she's cleaned it up tremendously. It looks great. It's a small little office building, you know, up and down 28 in this area. It fits in nicely. She's landscaped the front. There's an existing sign that she's actually removing with the site plan and replacing it with a smaller sign set back further. So there's a lot of things we're doing here. We're putting in a rain garden in the back and some other things. This would have been allowed with a conditional use permit. We wouldn't even be here, but the existing lot is less than 3 acres. And correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, but that would not allow us to actually go into the overlay district conditional use permit. So we have to go before the board. So that's really about it. That's a summary. And I don't know if the board would take up or consider taking these things up as one package or not.
However you'd like to present it is fine.
We'd like to take it up as one package because we feel that it is one design, it's one, we feel that it fits in well with the neighborhood. If you need me to go through the criteria, I can actually summarize. I don't want to read it verbatim. The people behind me are probably going to get,
Well,
Tired
no,
of
you
that.
do, for the record, you do have to pretty much go verbatim, or
Okay.
else it's not presented to the public in a way that is all
okay.
inclusive.
So, number one, the variance will not be contrary to public interest because renovation of the small building for the office will provide increased public tax base, and the owner's use serves a needed public benefit, which is that the business is actually managing in-home healthcare services. So this is really just a management office. Not a lot of people coming in and out of here, very low traffic, certainly lower than the spa that used to be here. So the public interest in terms of increased tax base, beautification of the property, all of that is with the public interest. Views from the street will not be affected as the addition is to the rear, and the parking area is actually existing, and we're making the parking area better and with more buffers. Number two, the spirit of the ordinance is observed. The addition, is to the rear, and the smaller scale of the setting in the building is actually retained and made better, and that goes to the spirit of the ordinance. The parking area is reduced in terms of the setback to the front and also to the side than what it is right now. The existing building is actually wholly in the setback, the front setback in this zone. They didn't mean to do that. They built it, back in the 1940s, and zoning came in after that and changed things. But, with what we're doing to the property, we're actually bringing it back in with the spirit of the zone, with the ordinance. We're trying to keep the building and expand to the back, and even though all of that is sort of in the front setback, you would never know it as you drive up and down the road, the spirit of the ordinance, the way the landscaping is and the buffering. It just feels right and it looks right. And that goes a long way to meeting the spirit of the ordinance. There's no clutter here. It's actually beautified. Substantial justice, number three. As I mentioned, this building started in the 1940s. It changed use over the decades, including mixed use, commercial, office, and spa. The new current use is a small professional office. It's visually appealing and appropriate. The small conference room addition in the rear with the bathroom allows very small existing space to be utilized via the renovation without removing a building. We're also not going any further back into the property, which would impact any buffers or wetland buffers or anything that are back there. The DOT permit was already reissued on this, recognized the reuse of the existing parking area and drive, and then that parking area and drive are actually being improved even more in terms of increasing setbacks and buffers. Number four, the values of the property, surrounding properties are not diminished, 'cause as I talked earlier about the investment Paul has made into the property substantially in renovating the existing building and improving the landscaping and the setting of the building. The addition will be placed in the rear and has no negative visual impact to abutters. Improving the small parking area that has existed there for decades will decrease the encroachment towards the abutting property. And we're also, you can see the landscape plan. We're actually adding trees and shrubs where pavement exists now in that buffer. Literal enforcement of the provision of the ordinance on unnecessary hardship under A. The special conditions of the property, we talked about the, existing building being in the setback already, the existing pavement being in the setback, and the small expansion to the rear. You won't see it from the road, and the actual encroachment of the pavement is actually being lessened out there and landscaped further. So in terms of the relationship between the general purpose of the ordinance and specific application, I don't think that the new C1, well, we call it the new C1 district, but it's new as it was when the building was put in the 1940s and then changed over the decades. But, we are honoring that look, the look of the road, the look of the setting, and the building's already in the existing setback. So even if we're putting in a small conference room addition to the back, we're still in the front of the front setback. And there are other buildings up and down the road that are similarly like that. And I would argue that Paula's building is probably going to be one of the prettiest buildings out there, and very, very small scale and appropriate for a small business use. So the existing ordinance really doesn't allow us to do that. Londonderry did change their ordinance to allow CUPs, conditional use permits, via the overlay district. The overlay district was intended to allow this to happen, but there was a provision in there that said that you had to have a certain minimum acreage of the property to do it. Well, this property was already small, so it fell through the cracks of the ordinance. It really did. And I'd like to point out that we actually have 3 times the green area. If you look at the data on the cover sheet, we have 3 times the green area on this lot than what's required. So, and we're about 1/3 the size of the CUP trigger for a property of this size. So it really is truly unique to this property. And you can see with that data, we're not overbuilding the property at all. We're very, very nicely done with tons and tons of green area surrounding this little building already. The proposed use is a reasonable one. The use pertaining to the small building addition in the setback and actually the parking, we're actually improving the parking setbacks, and we're just keeping the existing driveway there but making it prettier. The building is getting a little bit bigger, but not much, and it's to the rear. So we think that that's reasonable, and it would meet all the other criteria and meet the state permitting criteria that's left over to be done. We did throw in a few items under 5B as an alternate, but we really didn't need to argue that point so much. But we did put in there that, it's a small room addition to the rear of the building. Again, I don't want to repeat myself, but it does say that on here. It's the right thing to do in improving the corridor with an aesthetically pleasing small business with no negative impact to the environment, traffic, or any other aspects.
Question from the board?
So
Well,
this
go ahead.
property is a non-conforming property,
It's an existing non-conforming property.
looking to expand the existing non-conforming property.
Yes, the building is existing non-conforming right now in the setback, and the existing parking is existing non-conforming as part of the setback, yes.
How many parking spaces are there now?
There are about 8 or 9, but those spaces are not meeting the Londonderry criteria, and we are actually going to meet the Londonderry criteria with the new configuration with 6 spaces. The 8 or 9 spaces that are out there are striped kind of weird. They're very narrow and short, and they don't meet the standards. But our new design does indeed meet those dimensional standards.
So the lot is an acre in size,
Just under an acre.
but everything's front-loaded. Can't just push the whole building back?
Well,
Cost impact there.
that's a good question. There are wetlands all the way to the rear of the property. There's a small green area yard that the Heritage Commission asked us to let grow in to provide the 50-foot wetland buffer, that there's existing grass in the buffer now, so we're going to actually let that grow in. We are expanding to the rear
So are
of the building.
wetlands impeding if you push the building back, you just wouldn't be able to put a building in there? Or you're just telling me there's wetlands?
Well, we'd have to rip the building down and then rebuild it all the way back. It just doesn't seem reasonable to do that. The existing building looks great. It's a very small scale. Like I said, the footprint is smaller than the room we're sitting in. The existing pavement, if we put that out back, we would have to actually just build a long driveway all the way around to the back and then use the back green yard as the parking. And that would actually increase substantially the amount of pavement that we would put in to still provide the 6 spaces. We feel that in restriping the existing lot and cutting the pavement so that we can put a landscape buffer to the sideline, that's the right thing to do. It's a reduced amount of pavement overall.
So understand that we have ordinances that prohibit us expanding a prior non-conforming use. So we're trying to bring properties into conformance, which is why I'm asking you if you just are not able to build anything in the back there.
I mean, technically, I mean, the technical answer is, I just answered it. I mean, we could rip the whole building down and put in a bigger building in the back.
You don't need to.
But it's not fair or reasonable. The existing unique characteristics of the property right now, which existed before zoning, before the criteria that you just talked about, the building has always been there. It's been there,
Right, so what I'm
you know,
trying to
since the
explain to you is
1940s.
that there are ordinances on the book that prohibit expanding a prior non-conforming use. It's
and
also-
that, and that's why we're here, ma'am, to ask for that relief, and we believe that it's very reasonable. You'll see things on other agendas that, you know, show expansions to the front and all over the place, and we're doing a little bump out to the rear that you wouldn't even see from the street.
Any other questions? So the reason we're saying it's a 35, to encroach 35 feet into the 60 foot is because that's the old original buildings encroaching?
Correct.
Yep.
And we're cleaning that up. It really has nothing to do with the addition.
Because it's a pre-existing non-conforming, if they expand the use, they lose that status of pre-existing non-conforming. That's why they need a variance for the whole building.
Well, that's what I was looking for clarity with, because, you know, we're talking about this addition, and it's all together. So to me, I understand the non-conforming part, but the essence is to put an addition on, and so that's I guess what you were trying to say.
No addition, they wouldn't have to be here.
No, right,
Of course,
absolutely,
if they
yeah.
bring addition, it makes it non-conforming, I see. Good question.
Neil, if you look behind you, that might help clarify it. So you have the 60-foot front setback.
Right, and that's what I was looking at, and I didn't see the addition as being 35, and most non-conforming buildings, I didn't realize we were clearing the whole building, I guess, was just my point.
So the addition itself doesn't go into any of the setbacks? It's the-
Yeah, there's a line there that
Does a little.
the supermajority of the addition is actually conforming in the setback, but there is a slot, a little narrow slot in back of the building, about 5 to 7 feet that she has her hand on there, that's actually in the setback. But our intent was to expand, you know, in the allowed use, which is beyond the, you know, the setback. So most of that addition, the bump out, is conforming, but we had to ask for the entire piece of the existing building, all the way, even to the front porch that's out there.
So is the 5 feet into the side setback, is that what the addition is doing? Or is behind the building? I'm trying to figure out.
It would be about, the new portion of the bump out of the building is actually about 5 to 7 feet within the front setback,
the front
only so we can connect
On the
it.
side.
No, I see 35 into the front. I'm just trying to figure, oh, I see I get it, okay.
Yeah.
That would mean the entire building is too far into the front.
Yes, and the existing building is about 5 feet into the side setback already, and we're not touching that.
I get it now, okay, thanks.
Anything else from the board? Anybody in the public, anybody in public in favor of the variance request? Seeing no one that would like to speak, I guess. Anyone opposed or with questions? Back to the board. So we have 1, 5. We're all good then?
Do you have any more questions?
Is that a yes, all the way across the board? All right, we'll go to deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have
Yes,
lots
please.
of sheets?
A lot of sheets for this one.
Four sheets.
I got 4. Yep,
Two at a time.
thank you.
Those the first two, or? Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, so we're gonna go into the 5 points,
mine's well.
okay? We're gonna do the first one.
You want this, oh, mine's kind of messy though. here.
First one's the big one.
All right, so first one, variance 4.3.3.A.1 to encroach 35 feet into the 60-foot front setback for an existing non-conforming building and a proposed addition. Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest.
Say would not. I don't see how it does any harm to the public.
So what I was trying to elicit is some other reason to allow it other than the non-conforming nature of it. So,
No, and I understand that.
yes,
and-
do I
and
think it has any impact on the neighborhood? I do not.
I do not either.
Safety issues.
But as far as trying to clean up, we run into that a lot of times. Something like this, it's not quite as easy as pushing it back.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I agree, but it feels like you gotta run through the 5 points on this, and
No, absolutely,
it's this.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it'll fit all of them, but
So, would or would not be contrary? Would not?
Would not.
would not.
Would not. And the collective reasoning,
That's the character of the neighborhood?
do we agree on that for the character of the neighborhood?
I do.
Do, sort of a mixed use down there, so.
Can we get a stamp that says it?
The spirit of the ordinance would or would not be observed?
Would?
I agree.
I agree.
Well, I don't see any health, safety, or welfare concerns.
All right. I say would.
For those
I
reasons.
mean, the spirit of the ordinance would not, would be observed, yes, would be. So we have all woods?
Would.
Okay. So there's no,
Safety or
no
health?
safety or welfare health concerns. Granting the variance would or would not do substantial justice.
Would.
Would.
I would agree.
Would.
The loss to the applicant's greater than the gain to the public.
Do we agree?
Yep.
Yes.
For the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties would or would not be diminished.
I would say would not.
I agree.
I agree.
Agree? Would not?
Commercial area, improving the property.
There's nothing for or against other than landscaping and improving the look.
Okay, I agree with that, yeah. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because there is or is not a fair substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property.
Well, the answers in the petition are unresponsive. I don't know that we actually discussed what other properties were around there. It would make this one different than the others, other than it's prior non-conforming. I don't know if there are other prior non-conforming properties in the area.
Well, most of them appear to be with that 60-foot setback.
Yeah.
So basically, they're all pre-zoning.
Correct. So I guess that's how strongly do you believe they should have to push it back and rip it down before they put a small addition on? And so is that unique? I mean, it's fairly unique for that area.
But if in that area, they're all
If it, that's also a C,
pre-existing
C1.
zoning.
So you have what looks like a residential residence in a C1 environment. So I mean, if somebody was to go in there and do a true C1 type of use, more of an industrial space business or retail or something, then it would definitely,
Well, that may make it different than the others around it.
yeah.
I'm looking at the little map that they have. It's a pretty small lot in relation to the others around it. There was 3 of them, and then,
Are we looking at B or 5A1?
A1.
A1. No, I'm talking
oh,
so that's
what did
substantial.
you note?
No, I would,
You didn't.
it's just notes. I was trying to figure out, because we keep talking about it being unique, but A really doesn't get into the uniqueness. It's when we go to B that we start.
So it's a very small, pre-existing, non-conforming
Building or lot?
building, lot, the whole 9 yards, where the others are, they have other attributes. Granted, they are pre-zoning, but this one's tends, which the applicant did bring forth in his presentation how small it was. So could we conclude that there is not, due to the pre-zoning and small size of the lot? As it's,
You can go with small size of the lot, I don't know about the pre-zoning.
1940.
Well, they were,
Well, right,
It's
but,
allowed where it is, yeah.
correct.
So the argument, the statement was a small existing building and I would go with would not due to the size and the lot. The lot is smaller than others.
And we all agreed there is not, correct?
I did.
yes.
Okay. The proposed use is or is not a reasonable one?
Is,
Is,
Some additional space on your property.
so additional space. To a small house,
building.
I would call it a building.
building.
Why would this not apply to both the first two?
Do we have any comments or restrictions for this?
So I think the applicant did mention that the parking lot was gonna be smaller.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm trying to see, but however, he got the DOT approval. So are we getting smaller on the driveway entry, or that's probably the only thing that DOT regulates, huh?
That's what I had read, but I could be wrong. It was the internal size going from 8 to 6. May I ask the applicant to
Sure.
clarify? Sir, was that 8 parking spaces down to 6, interior-wise?
Eight non-conforming spaces.
Yes?
Down to 6 conforming spaces.
And the entrance will remain the same?
Essentially, yes.
Because the DOT required that it stay the same.
They didn't require, I mean, they just re-permitted what was out there on the entrance, so.
At the entrance, okay, so
Yeah,
the,
the
okay,
entrance essentially stayed the same.
stayed the same.
If anything, we're pushing it back from the sideline of the property.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
More in conformance.
Thank you. All right, so do we want
Well, there's
to,
nothing really to hang our hats on there then, I guess. I thought I'd heard that the pushing it back and making it a little smaller, but it's not really defined well, so I'm fine
No,
with
he
it.
showed a plan that definitely delineated.
it delineated that, yeah. In
No,
the-
I was more about the curb cut on the DOT. That's all. I'm fine, unless you guys want to.
No, do we need to comment about the parking spaces? Are we good, or do you want,
That's.
we're good? Okay. Okay. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion on case number 721, 2021-1, for the first variance, to approve the variance for 4.3.3.A.1 to encroach 35 feet into the 60-foot front setback for an existing non-conforming building and a proposed addition.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Irene. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
On case number 721, 2021-1, request for a variance from Londonderry zoning ordinance 433A1 to encroach 35 feet into the 60-foot front setback for an existing non-conforming building, and a proposed addition was granted 5-0.
For the second request, 4.3.3.A.2 to encroach 5 feet into the 30-foot front setback for an existing non-conforming. So, let me start over. For the second, on case number 721, 2021-1, 4.3.3.A.2 to encroach 5 feet into the 30-foot side setback for an existing non-conforming building. Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest?
Would not?
Would not?
Back to you right here.
So character, the character of the neighborhood is unchanged. The spirit of the ordinance would or would not be observed?
Would?
Would. There are no safety concerns or health to the public.
Nope.
That's the first one, I think it's both, actually. We'll have to have a contest. This,
Granting the variance would or would not do substantial justice.
Would? You got a bunch of woods over there?
Yes.
Would.
would,
The loss to the applicant is greater than the gain to the public.
yep. See, no gain to the public, well, maybe a little. Standardization.
For the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties would or would not be diminished?
Would not.
Would not. Improved landscaping and decrease in parking lot? Do we all agree?
Yep.
Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because, one, there is or is not a fair substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because
Same as before?
is not, we all agree,
Is not?
small lot as compared to the others that are surrounding. And the proposed use is or is not a reasonable one?
Is?
Is. Additional space is reasonable. Any comments or restrictions for this one?
Nope.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion on 7/21/2021-1 for the second part of the variance, 4.3.3.A.2, to encroach 5 feet into the 30-foot side setback for an existing non-conforming building, to approve this variance.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mitch. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
So in case number 7/21/2021-1, a request for variance from Londonderry zoning ordinance 433A2 to encroach 5 feet into 30-foot side setback for an existing non-conforming building. The same has been granted 5-0.
Third part for case number 7/21/2021-1, 4.3.3.B.1 to encroach 13.7 feet into the 15-foot perimeter green landscaping buffer for a paved parking area. Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest.
Would not?
Would not. And for this parking area, or perimeter green landscaping buffer, any comments on why it would not?
They're actually reducing what was there, aren't they, or no? Did I read that wrong? Let me go back to the,
Same reasoning as before.
yeah.
So character of the neighborhood is not
Sure.
unchanged?
Unchanged.
The spirit of the ordinance would or would not be observed?
Say I would.
Would?
Would. No safety or health concerns? Granting the variance would or would not do substantial justice?
Would?
Would.
Would, Suzanne?
Yes.
Okay.
Benefits the applicant more than.
Loss to applicant is greater than gain to public?
That's because you have that sheet.
Yes.
I'm not sure that's gospel.
For the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties would or would not be diminished?
Would not.
Would
Would
not?
not. It's reducing,
There's,
it's reducing pavement. So. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because there is or is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because
Is not?
is not. Reasoning?
Same as before.
You'd be less creative?
Small lot as compared.
Yeah, that's fair. It's the same.
The proposed use is or is not a reasonable one?
Is,
Is. And do we have any comments or restrictions?
nothing here.
I got nothing. Okay. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for case number 721, 2021-1 for the third request for a variance, 4.3.3.B.1, to encroach 13.7 feet into the 15-foot perimeter green landscaping buffer for a paved parking area, to approve this variance.
Do I have a second?
I'll second again.
Mitch seconds again. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against?
In case number 721, 2021-1, request for a variance from Londonderry zoning ordinance 433B1 to encroach 13.7 feet into the 15-foot perimeter green landscaping buffer for a paved parking area. The same has been granted 5-0.
Final, number 4, for case number 721, 2021-1. This is for 4.3.3.B.1 to encroach 30 feet into the 30-foot front perimeter green landscaping buffer for a paved parking area. Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest?
Would not?
Would not.
Would not.
Would not.
An essential character of the neighborhood
Yep.
is observed. The spirit of the ordinance would or would not be observed?
It would.
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 There's no safety or health concerns.
Granting the variance would or would not do substantial justice?
Would.
And loss to the applicant is greater than the gain to the public? Do we all agree?
Agree.
For the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties would or would not be diminished?
Would not?
Would not.
Would not. Improved landscaping. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because there is or is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because
Is not?
is not small lot as compared to the others that are surrounding. And is the proposed use is or is not a reasonable one?
Is.
Is.
Yes.
Additional space is reasonable. Do we have any restrictions or comments for this one?
Nothing here.
We're all good? Okay. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a request.
Motion?
Motion. Phew. I'd like to make a motion on case number 2021-1, on the fourth request for a variance, 4.3.3.b.1, to encroach 30 feet into the 30-foot front perimeter green landscaping buffer for a paved parking area, to grant that.
Do I have a second? Irene, second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
And case number 7/21/2021-1, request for a variance from Londonderry zoning ordinance 433B1 to encroach 30 feet into the 30-foot front perimeter green landscaping buffer for a paid parking area, was granted 5-0.
You're all set?
Thank you, and I'd like to thank Ms. Gandy also. She was very, very helpful in shepherding us through all these variances. It was pretty complex for a little small property, but
She,
thank
Nick,
you.
and Beth help us every month also, so
We
Thank
couldn't be up here doing
we
it.
agree with you.
Thank you.
Everybody good? You want a quick break? Quick 5 minutes? Does that work? Take a 5-minute break? Get the boys.
guess I want to drop an F-bomb or something.
Go after that. Okay.
I guess we could start with that, Laura, huh? Back to the meeting. The next case?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself on the next two matters.
All righty.
Mr. Rose, we only have 4 then for the next. Okay.
So we'll give them the option after it's read in.
Okay.
Mitch, I appoint you clerk for these next 2, I believe.
Okay.
You would read the first one, and I believe there are letters.
You do so at your own peril, but okay. Case number 07-21-2021-2, request for a variance from LZO 4.3.3.b to reduce the required 33% green landscaping area to 11%, with the addition of an 8-foot by 12-foot extension to the existing patio at 103 Nashua Road, map 6, lot 35-17, zone C1, Rivard Pizza LLC owner and Renegades Pub North applicant.
Were there letters in there that need to be read?
Can we do the letters now?
Yeah.
Okay. So there were, looks like there are 7 letters. I think they're all the same, but they are from different people. So, oh, they're not, well, they are identical. Okay, so I'm just going to read, I'll read one in and then read the names of the people who sent it.
That would be fine, I believe, sure.
Okay. So this is regarding letter of support for Renegades Pub. To whom it may concern, I write this letter to advocate my support in favor of the Londonderry ZBA granting the 2 variances sought by Renegades Pub. The owners/operators of this establishment are hardworking members of this community and have a successful business that generates jobs and supports the local economy. Not only are the owners known for giving back to this wonderful community in many different avenues, but they have transformed a tired business into a thriving location. As the property owner, I am glad to have the Renegades team, and together we will continue to reinvest in the property. What Renegades is asking for from the ZBA will enhance the property, help a local business, and benefit people of this community with a convenient and popular source of food and drink. Then it's highlighted or bolded and underlined. What they are asking for helps them and hurts no one! Exclamation mark. And back to regular print. I do implore the ZBA to kindly grant these 2 variances and help a good business thrive and grow at a time when so many businesses are struggling as a result of the obstacles that we have dealt with, indeed, are still dealing with from the events of this past year and a half. I do thank you for your care and attention to this matter. And I'll give you the different signers. So this is Robert Rivard, property owner, 103 Nashua Road, Londonderry, New Hampshire. Christopher T. George, Mr. Steer Meats, Inc. Sandra Vauderell, 3 Mohawk Drive, Londonderry, New Hampshire, 03053. Joseph LaRose, 8 Mohawk Drive, Londonderry, New Hampshire, 03051. And Elizabeth Connors, 3 Mohawk Drive, Londonderry, New Hampshire, 03053. Oh, wait, there might be a couple more. I was rushing. Jen Krieger, 3 Mohawk Drive, Londonderry, New Hampshire, 03053. And Gina Leggett, 1 Button Drive, Londonderry, New Hampshire, 03053.
Thank you. Who'll be presenting?
That will be me, Mr. Chair. My name is Christopher Drescher. I'm an attorney with Cronin, Bisson, and Zielinski, office at 722 Chestnut Street in Manchester, New Hampshire. And with me is one of the owners and applicants, Greg Ryan.
So we have 4 members now because one of them had to recuse themselves. So you still need to get 3 out of 5. So you have the option of continuing the case or both cases until next month when hopefully usually we have a full 5 with alternates, so you would have better odds, I guess. So that's your call, but I'm giving you the option. You can't come back later if you don't get 3 of 5. 3 out of the 4?
If I could, just for a second, just.
Oh, no,
for my
absolutely,
client.
yeah. You can. I know it's not always an easy decision.
Remember you talked about that.
Mr. Chair, I think my client would like to take you up on the opportunity to be heard then on the next month when we have more robust board, if we may.
Okay, so that will go for both cases?
Correct.
So we don't need to make a motion, right? We just, well, we do? All right.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to continue case number 721, 2021-2 to our next meeting, August 5th, 2021.
That's not the next meeting.
August 18th.
Oh, I'm sorry, August 18th.
That was the overflow.
That was the overflow, okay. Let me redo my motion.
And you probably could put them both
Can
together?
I do both together? Okay, great. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for case number 721, 21-2 and 721, 2021-3 to continue those two cases to August 18th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Irene seconds, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Continued to August 18th, 2021.
These files are just flip them over.
Just flip them over that way. Laurel will reorganize it for us for next month.
She's back.
Thank you.
Good? Let me catch up with you here. Yeah, what are we on next? We're on this one. Call the next case. Are you ready, Jackie, or are you still
I'm
organizing?
ready.
Case number 721, 2021-4 is a request for a variance from Londonderry zoning ordinance 4.1.2 use table to allow a restaurant use in the industrial 2 zone, which is otherwise prohibited. 49 Harvey Road, map 14, lot 44B, zone industrial 2. Lexer Realty LLC is the owner and Pipe Dream Brewery LLC is the applicant.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I'd like
Mitch?
to move that the board cannot consider Pipe Dream LLC's variance application because it's not materially different in nature and degree from Pipe Dream's previous variance application. Additionally, this second application does not meaningfully address the health, safety, welfare, and parking concerns raised in response to the first variance application.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Do we still have a voting sheet on the denial?
Yes, you should have a.
Do we have that variance, the previous variance number? Do you have that readily accessible?
I do not, but I can get that for you. You can have it. It should be in the folder, if you open it up on the previous zoning. Yeah.
721. Oh, down here, I'm sorry. Suppose 318-2020-2. Okay, I think that's all we needed to do for that.
Mr. Chair, may I speak?
I will give you a minute, yes.
I think I'm entitled to at least go through my pitch briefly before you make the determination.
The board is at, this is the same variance or same request as the last one, and as the motion was made by Mitch, it didn't address any of the concerns from the previous one, so the board is within its power to not continually have to rehear a variance request at the whim and not addressing the issues that were concerned. So I appreciate that that's how you feel, but that's not how the board feels, and whatever your next step is your next step. But it was denied, and there's nothing substantially different in nature, and as it was mentioned, you know, there's nothing that addressed our health, safety, and welfare concerns in your presentation, in your paperwork.
Well, we would have gotten to that. I mean, the health and safety, welfare will be addressed, and of course, if any approval would have been contingent on a visit to the planning board.
No, the variance would not require a visit to the planning board, but that's kind of out of my purview anyway. But we didn't see anything in the application, and it's our purview or our right to look at the application and your submittal, which is part of the record, and what your arguments were for each of the 5 points of law. So that's kind of where we're at here, and that's what the motion was made and the zoning board ruled on.
And I guess my next step is my next step. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Have two more.
so it was to do, move the board not consider, so 5-0, motion granted, variance not heard. So I don't know how we do that, right?
Ready for the next one?
We're ready.
Case number 721-2021-5 is a request for a variance from Londonderry zoning ordinance 412 use table to allow a daycare in the agricultural residential zone, which is otherwise prohibited. 40 Mammoth Road, map 1, lot 43, zoned AR1, Mack and Families LLC, owner and applicant. There's some previous zoning. 1963, a special exception to operate a sheet metal shop, and a variance for change of use was granted with the special exception and the variance. 1966, special exception to operate a real estate office was granted with restrictions. Again in 66, a special exception to operate a floor and wall covering business in a commercial building that was granted with restrictions. 69, a variance to construct in addition to the existing building for office use was granted with restrictions. And in 1970, it was a special exception to operate a donut shop. We've had a lot of history there. Was granted.
I thought it was always a church.
Apparently not.
Who will be presenting?
I'll be presenting Daniel Muller from Cronin Bisson Zielinski, 722 Chestnut Street, Manchester, New Hampshire. With me is Mary Lou Brown, one of the principals of the owner and applicant of the property. Good evening. By way of a little bit of background, Mack and Families LLC acquired this property in October 2005 from the Victory Baptist Church for the purpose of operating a daycare. Unlike a lot of people, they did do their homework before they purchased this property. They made a specific inquiry to the town as to whether the daycare use would be permitted. They were advised that it would be as the continuation of a pre-existing non-conforming use. A copy of the letter from James Smith, the then building inspector, is included with the application. Based upon that representation, they purchased the property and started operating a daycare on the property, which would have otherwise been prohibited because this was in the AR zoning district. They have operated essentially the same business since 2005. We're not talking here about an expansion or anything else. As a daycare facility, they are required by state statute, when they go for their license, to get a verification from the town that their operation conforms with the zoning ordinance, and there's also a question as to whether there are any restrictions on the number of, essentially, children served at that location. There are examples of that when Mr. Canuel was the building inspector, where he signed off saying, yes, indeed, the use conformed to your zoning ordinance, and there were no restrictions. The licensing requirement is every 3 years, so there have been multiple verifications over the years. Based on these representations, the owner and applicant improved the business. As we indicate in our application, they spent over $1 million ultimately improving the property to that end as a daycare business. After being in the business for 15+ years, my client decided it was time to sell the property and the business. Apparently, a prospective buyer, also doing what they should do, went to the town to confirm that the use was permitted. Contrary to the prior positions taken by the town on a repeated basis, they were informed that the use was not permitted, and a notice of violation dated April 17th, 2021 was issued to my client saying that the daycare operation violated the zoning ordinance, and a variance would be required, which is why we are here tonight. As an initial position, pursuant to the New Hampshire Supreme Court's decision, Bartlett versus City of Manchester, which interpreted RSA 674-33 Roman 2, we're asking that this board determine that no variance is required in the first instance. And the basis is fairly straightforward. Again, this is not a situation where my client just went into this blindly, kept the town out of the loop. Before they purchased it, they got a determination that this was allowed. No one challenged that determination. That became binding. There were subsequent determinations in terms of zoning verifications that were made saying they conformed to the zoning ordinance. No one challenged that. Those became binding on the town. With all due respect to Mr. Cardner, who made the decision in this case that we required a variance, he's not in a position to essentially overrule the prior determinations. He's not an appellate. He has no appellate authority. That's this board's jurisdiction, this board's jurisdiction alone. Number two, again, the determination here in 2005 was that this was a continuation of a pre-existing non-conforming use. And now that position remained throughout for 15 years. And it's only now that they're going to sell it that that position has suddenly changed. And based on what has been represented, that, the belief was when this determination, the most recent determination was made, that the town just discovered this use. It appears that there may be some history that was missing when that determination was made. Because again, if you look in your packet, you have the 2005 letter from Mr. Smith.
No, and if I may, I realize you're going through all this, but the board's purview here is really, I don't know how the board can just dismiss any requirement. We can hear your variance request. Short of us going into getting a ruling from our town attorney or some legal counsel, your argument about it standing or not standing may or may not be valid, but I think it's way beyond the purview of us here on this board. But we are here to hear the variance request if you'd like to go that route, I guess.
Okay, just so I can reserve
I
it.
was
for-
trying to give you the
Yeah.
background, but
Oh,
I
I
mean,
know.
it's getting to the point where, does
I
the
know,
board agree with me here or no?
I'll tell you, your authority is RSA 674, 33, Roman 2. I argued the Bartlett case going the other way, saying that you had to file an administrative appeal for the board to take up that issue. The Supreme Court disagreed. They said that you can make a determination whether a variance is required in the first instance, but I understand the board's position, and I will address the variance elements. I will try to do it somewhat quickly, because I know it's been a long
No,
evening.
time's not, this is early still.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
We do,
Mitch.
remember, have 4 folks here. I don't know if we need to repeat it for every case, but we don't have we do have 5 now. Okay, sorry, I'm crazy.
That's all right.
This is what
It's ju-
happens
it's just
after
late
9
for
o'clock.
Mitch. No.
He can't count after 9.
That's true.
Too close.
The first element, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. This element focuses on whether the variances will unduly conflict with the basic objectives of the relevant zoning provision. More specifically, you look to whether the grant of the variance will alter the essential character of the area or threaten the public health, safety, or welfare. In terms of the character of the area, the owner has operated this daycare, Little Creative Angels, on the property since 2005 with the knowledge of everybody. As evinced by Mr. Smith's determination in 2005, a daycare center of some type operated on the property prior to that time. As such, a daycare center use on the property has been a part of the neighborhood for a long period of time, and therefore the continuation of that long-standing use of the property will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. Likewise, notwithstanding the long-standing presence of Creative Little Angels in the neighborhood, the owner is not aware of any complaints relative to the use. This would include the lack of complaints relative to parking, noise, and appearance of the property. The town allowed the current business to operate on the property when the owner acquired the property. The business has been and will continue to be subject to inspections and oversight by the town or state relative to the health and life safety inspections. You should have copies of various inspection records to that point in the record with the application. In short, the current business has been running on the property for over 15 years without issue, and it will continue to be reviewed for health and life safety compliance, and as such, the variance allowing that use to continue will not threaten the public health, safety, or welfare. With respect to the spirit of the ordinance element, since it's related to the public interest under the Farrar versus City of Keene case and many others, for the reasons stated relative to that variance, it also will not be contrary to the spirit of the ordinance. Substantial justice will be done by granting the variance. The loss to the owner in the event that the variance is denied outweighs the gain to the public, and therefore the substantial justice would be done by granting the variance. The owner exercised due diligence before purchasing the property and inquired of the town whether its proposed use of the property was permitted. Only after being advised by the town's then zoning administrator that the use was permitted did the owner purchase the property for $525,000 and begin operation of its daycare center on the property. During the owner's subsequent operation of the daycare center, the town repeatedly confirmed that the use conformed with the ordinance and there was no local limit on the number of children served. The owner continued to make investments in the business and property based upon those representations. Those investments, as I indicated earlier, total over the 15 years over $1 million, even though the town determined that the owner's use of the property was a continuation of a pre-existing non-conforming use, and such use runs with the property. The town would now say that without a variance, the use ends with the owner who is trying to sell the property and the business. The loss of the use would not only deprive the owner of its good faith investments in the property based on the representations made to it by the town, but would adversely impact the planned sale of the business, as the same would not be lawful. In sum, the denial of the variance would result in a significant and unjust loss to the owner. By contrast, the gain to the public in the event of denial would be minimal at best. The use has existed on the property for a long period of time at this point without complaint and with at least a tacit approval of the town. As discussed above, the use would continue to be subject to health and life safety reviews if it is allowed, thereby protecting the public interest. In terms of unnecessary hardship, a fundamental premise of the zoning ordinance is the segregation of land according to uses, and this request implicates a variance from a use restriction. The agricultural residential zoning district is intended principally for agricultural, forestry, residential, and public uses, as well as water quality preservation. The existing development on the property, including the building, parking area, and playground, is not conducive to most permitted uses within the AR1 zoning district, and the market for those uses permitted in the AR1 zoning district for which the existing development could be appropriate, such as religious facilities, is limited, as evinced by a lack of interest in the property since the owner began to market the same. To date, the interest has been in the business, the daycare business, and the use of the property to that end. Furthermore, the daycare center use of the property predates the owner's acquisition of the property in 2005, since it continued over 15 years since that time with the knowledge of the town. The owner not only paid $525,000 to acquire the property, but subsequently invested likely close to $1 million in the business in reliance on the town's representations and assurances that its daycare center use was allowed on the property. Among the investments made in furtherance of the business were an updated heating system, the installation of sprinklers, the installation of carpet, the painting of all 3 floors, the improvement of the playground, and landscaping. The owner has also maintained certain standards to satisfy health and life safety inspections connected with its licensure. Suddenly, essentially, the town would seek to deprive the owner of any reasonable return on its significant good faith investment by declaring the use for which the owner purchased and improved the property would no longer be allowed on the property 15 years after the fact. A denial of such a significant investment does constitute a legal hardship, citing to the Harrington versus Town of Warner case. Furthermore, the existing development on the property, which can be a special condition of the property, as discussed above, reflects the longstanding daycare center use of the property rather than other permitted uses of the property. Finally, notwithstanding the provisions of the ordinance, the use has been part and parcel of the neighborhood for a significant period of time and therefore is part of the fabric of the neighborhood. For any and all of these reasons, there is no fair and substantial relationship between the general purpose of the zoning ordinance and specific application of the property owing to the special conditions of the property. Similarly, the daycare use is a reasonable use of the property. Use predates the owner's ownership of the property and has continued for over 15 years since the owner has purchased the property with the town's knowledge and blessing. The owner has made improvements to the property consistent with the daycare center use in light of the town's repeated representations. Despite this, Mackin Families LLC received a notice of violation. The only other thing I have to add is with regard to the diminution of value element. Once again, we have a long-standing use. I'm going to essentially repeat myself. That has been there for 15 years without incident. That is subject to regular inspections and would have to continue to be under state law, such that there's no public health, safety, or welfare. And again, this has been there 15 years within the neighborhood, no issues. And as such, we would ask that the board allow it to be continued so that they may sell it and get a reasonable return on their investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go into the board's questions, there was a letter, I believe, that has...
Yes, we got one letter. To whom it may concern, we are Tom and Barbara Fucarli. I apologize if that is not the pronunciation that I use. And live at 3 Woodland Drive. We are adjacent butters to 40 Mammoth Road, Creative Little Angels. We are residents of Londonderry for the past 18 years and next door neighbors to the Creative Little Angels daycare for the entire 16 years of their existence. During this time, we can offer the opinion that our town is lucky to have such a professionally run and caring operation that looks after our youth of our community. They provide a safe, dependable daycare and organized setting for local families in our town. We feel the need is great for working families to have a local service to help their daily lives. We both very much request that a variance be granted to this daycare at this location. Regards, Tom and Barbara Fucarli.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, I have just a few questions. How many children are at the daycare presently?
Or, like today, like 75,
Okay.
about.
And is that generally how many you have?
Yeah, we fluctuate between 75 and 100.
Okay. And what are your hours of operation?
6:30 to 6.
What a long day. And how many people do you have working for you?
About 22.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you so much.
Anything else from the board? Anyone in the audience in favor or with, we'll start with in favor. If there's none, anybody with questions or opposed, please come to the microphone.
My name is Jennifer Gray at 42 Mammoth Road. My property abuts their daycare center, and my driveway actually enters in through their parking lot. So the only thing I really have to say is that I would be in favor of granting the variance. It is in a residential area, but it is nice having, if there is a business there, that it does close at a reasonable hour. Having daycare accessible to the residents in that neighborhood is also a benefit. My own children went there. And did you have any further questions for me regarding the abutting property? We purchased, our house was the parsonage home when it was a church. So.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Questions or oppose in favor? Back to the board? Seeing none, we'll go into deliberation. Who's got the sheets?
She's got it. I got it, and I gave it to you.
Yeah, you did give me that
For
one.
that.
We're gaining.
Do we need to have any questions amongst ourselves? Do we have anything to hash out? Anybody have any questions?
No, I don't think so. I think getting right
Okay,
to the 5
let's get
points
it.
is good.
Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest?
Did it say would?
Would not.
It would not be contrary to the public interest, sorry.
After 9, see what happens. Would not.
Hey, I counted 5 people as 4.
Would not.
Okay, and reasoning? It does not alter the essential character of the
There, it's
neighborhood?
been there forever, yeah.
No change.
I moved here when it was a church. I don't even remember the sheet metal place. That must have been.
The spirit of the ordinance would or would not be observed?
I'm gonna go with would.
Yeah.
Would. And no violation to safety or health or welfare concerns?
It's licensed.
Granting the variance would or would not do substantial justice?
Would.
Would.
Lost.
Loss, okay. So
It's greater than gain
loss to
title.
the applicant is greater than the gain to the public.
It's well documented.
For the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties would or would not be diminished?
Would not.
Would not,
Would not.
Nothing changes.
no complaint from the neighbor that directly abuts? Special, yeah.
And this is the hard one. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because there is or is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because
I'm fairly confident is the only daycare in that area.
The answer is
Is that a condition of the property?
Yeah.
It was not.
Well,
I guess I'm looking
for a map.
for the special condition part. It is not, but I just want to word it correctly.
You only get the special conditions, right, if you don't get through A1 and A2? Simple. I mean, we just killed that. If we get through these, then we don't.
Yeah, that's, he didn't go into detail, it is a corner lot, but.
I don't, do we need special conditions under A1 and A2? If we get through A1 and A2, don't we just avoid the special conditions in B? Or am I missing something?
No, we have to get through 1 and 2, so what is the
No,
reasoning for 1?
Oh, I see, okay.
You didn't, nobody gave me an actual reasoning that I could put down here.
So no, but to your point, B does kick in if one in, if,
Right. But that's where they sort
A is
of
not.
dive down on
Right, so,
special conditions.
yeah, so whether or not we keep with 1 and 2, or it goes right into B. You know, 1A and 2A, or if I have to go into B.
so what is this? This is AR1, right? Yes. Well, we could go back to his.
I think it's the last part of his first long paragraph. Around furthermore, you can probably see where we can draw.
The existing development on the property, including the building, park, and area playground, is not conducive to the most permitted uses? Is that what you're thinking?
I mean, the existing development,
Is that what you were referring to, Mitch?
yeah, well, that part, and this has also been,
Well, the existing properties of the property is a daycare center. Makes it unique in that area since it's not otherwise allowed.
true,
Okay, I'll go with that.
that's okay.
So what is that?
Suzanne was saying because it,
Because of the use itself, the way it's set up to be a daycare center, makes it different than any other property that's in that area.
Oh,
Because there
okay.
would be other property in that area that would have that allowed use.
Okay, so the proposed use is or is not a reasonable one? Is?
Well, it's been there for 15 years, so.
We gotta write it down.
It's a reasonable by
So-
default.
Daycares are reasonable.
That's daycare.
Home daycares are allowed, right? It's a big house.
So, do we have any comments or restrictions?
No, I think, so I guess the only thing, if they were to do any additions or anything, they would have to go in front of a planning board.
Yeah.
I was just trying to make sure we don't sidestep anything. All right, so, yeah.
We're good.
You should probably restrict their hours to what they are now.
Six to six, 6:30 to 6.
I don't know if it's really necessary to make that as a restriction.
Up to the board. I know that's,
I don't know why we would do that.
I mean,
It's
if we,
daycare, they're not gonna keep them overnight.
well, there are ones for, the pandemic flushed out their need for round-the-clock care. But I don't,
What would be the reason, though, to make
Well,
that?
because you're in a neighborhood, so, although I don't know what else is around.
it's an AR1 district. I mean, it kind of helps fit it so that it doesn't become around-the-clock, people dropping kids off on second, third shift.
One
for-
abutter here, and we've got one letter, so there are.
It does
yeah,
go
because
with the property. but I
If
don't know-
Amazon puts up a big distribution center,
But I don't know that, do we just limit to exactly what the, I'm just trying to, so then if that were the case, is 6:30 to 6 the limit, like,
Yeah, that's true. What if you're late picking up your kid?
yeah, I mean, it just
That
feels
never
like.
happens.
you have to pay extra if you're too late.
And you do.
That was never my fault.
No, I never.
Trying to think if I ever did that.
I don't see a need to
Yeah,
govern or put
Well,
that as a restriction.
I kind of understand that it is a residential neighborhood that,
No, it's a point. I just don't know if we're just sort of arbitrarily picking those times because that's their current times. I mean, that, you know, it feels like sort of if they had told us 6 to 7.
so if we don't put it there and someone wants to go around the clock, would that
Well, I'm
bother
saying, so
you?
do you want to,
Well, if someone wanted to
You
go
have to
around.
get licensed, so the
Correct, I was gonna
state's-
say, there had to be licensing in place if there was around the clock.
Well, there's licensing anyway, it's just,
I don't know if licensing's the answer, but I'm just trying to figure out if limiting to the exact hours they gave us was necessary.
Where we had only support being shown, I mean, if we had opposition, then we
Yeah.
could conclude that there was issues.
I mean, there was the concern of people buy the property and suddenly, you know, say, I want to go to 8:30 or 9. I'm just trying to think, you want to throw it out to them, see what they,
if we'll open back up to the applicant,
Excuse me? I'm
we
sorry.
would open back up to the applicant. I guess we're kind of mixed on the hours, is that,
Yeah, we were just trying to discuss that to see if we could potentially move it along. One thing the board should know, and my client was telling me, that if you do want to do overnight, you do have to get a license for the overnight. There's no general right to do so. You have to get a special license from the state. And I guess we could put in there that if you want to have someone, if they want to do overnight, get an overnight license, come back from the board, that's fine.
I don't think that works, because we've already given the variance for the daycare, so that, but we appreciate the feedback on the state would require the license, but then what happens, somebody goes out and the next thing you know, it's 24
I
hours.
guess you could say that, well, let's put it this way. The condition could be that there is no overnight licensure allowed on this site without someone coming back to this board. You could put the condition, no overnight licensure for
So,
this day.
if we said 6 to 7 at night and they wanted to go for an overnight, would that force them back here?
Yes,
So we're trying to keep it clean so that we don't run into these,
Yeah.
recurring cases and people coming back in line trying to take different bites and it's,
no, if you put a condition on and somebody wants something different than the condition, the notion is you would have to come back to the board to modify the
so
variance.
6 to 7 sound reasonable?
Yes.
That gives you that extra time for those late parents.
For For 20 years, we always we close at 6, so that's funny.
So I'm good with that.
I'm good with that.
Everybody else?
Yep, so we agreed 6 to 7.
That sounds reasonable. Do
That's a long day.
you don't work that long?
Is that Monday through Friday? Is that weekends?
And holidays? No.
You know, it's fine, I mean.
Early on in my career, did work.
Okay, so if you want, Mr. Chair, if you want to make it Monday through Friday to make it even cleaner, that's fine.
Thank you, Laura, for reminding us all. How come you're still awake? You worked all day. Oh, we all did.
We all did.
Thank you for your feedback. We appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for case number 7/21/2021-5, request for a variance from LZO 4.1.2 use table to allow a daycare use in the agricultural residential zone, which is otherwise prohibited, to allow that variance with the following condition, that the operating hours shall be Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Maybe no
No,
more than?
yeah, not greater than.
Not greater than, the operating
Monday through Thursday at 7
operating
o'clock every night.
hours shall not be,
Shall not exceed.
shall not exceed. There we go, that's even cleaner. Operating hours shall not exceed Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Irene seconds. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one?
It's quick.
Yep.
do you
Case
think?
number 7/21/2021-5, a request for a variance from Londonderry zoning ordinance 412 use table to allow a daycare use in the agricultural residential zone, which is otherwise prohibited at 40 Mammoth Road, map 1, lot 43, zoned AR1. Mack and Families LLC, owner and applicant. The same was allowed 5-0, with the condition that the hours shall not exceed Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
One more time.
Are we gonna be able to make the last one, or should we continue it?
Oh, well.
Let's,
I'm sorry. That's not even funny, is it?
Bad joke.
Yeah.
Plenty of time for a quiet work, so thanks to technology.
Yeah, exactly, huh?
All right, in case number 7/21/2021-6 is a request for a variance Londonderry zoning ordinance 7.8B to encroach 5 feet more or less into the side setback for the construction of a sign at 18 Orchard View Drive, map 7, lot 40-12, zone C1, STG Realty Associates LLC, owner and applicant.
Any letters or previous? Oh, wait, no, there's previous, but
Here is previous zoning. We want to work backwards.
probably the only thing that's sign or out front related, I guess.
We've got a variance to alter the existing non-conforming sign and keep it less than 15 feet setback. That was 96. 98, 2 variances to alter an existing non-conforming sign was denied. A variance to operate a daycare was denied. In 2005, a area variance to allow a reduction in the required parking ratio from 5 per 1,000 square feet to 4.5 per 1,000 square feet of building area was granted. 2005, area variance to allow a reduction in the required parking ratio, again, that was granted. And in the third one was area variance to allow a reduction in the required buffer zone from 50 feet to 25 feet for 200 linear feet of perimeter distance was granted. Our most recent one, however, is not on here.
that's the top. No, it's not.
No.
Unfold the paper, no.
I don't know.
It's not here.
Yeah,
The most recent one's not on there. Interesting, okay. That's all right. It was, what, 3 months ago, 4 months ago? 5 months ago? Yeah, they go by quick.
That was back in December.
Thank you. Who'll be presenting?
My name is John Cronin, I'm appearing on behalf of the applicant. I'm an attorney with the firm of Cronin, Bisson and Zelinski. Back in the fall of 20, we came before this board seeking a variance with respect to a sign at the Workout and Wellness Club that's over on Orchard View Drive. We initially came in looking for 3 elements of relief. One was a size sign in height, area, and frontage. We were looking to take the sign from its existing location and move it to a point that was 5 feet from Orchard View Drive. We did have some butter feedback at that particular time. Generally, people were in support. Mr. Benson appeared initially, had some concerns, not about the height or the new design, but putting it 5 feet to Orchard View Drive. Through that process, there was debate, and the minutes will reflect with the board about the location, and I believe the consensus was that the preference was to leave the sign in its existing location and not move it any closer to Orchard View Drive. There was nothing picked up in the zoning review when the application was filed, and nothing that I recall or reflected in the minutes that talked about the proximity with respect to the side street. Did note in 1996 that there was a site plan approved that showed the sign at that particular location. After the variance was granted and the appeal period lapsed, Mr. Tringali, the principal of Workout Club, engaged the sign company and ordered the sign to be installed pursuant to the variances. They had a crew out there, I believe, digging to put the sign up when they were asked to stop, which they did do, having some concern from the town with respect to the location, and one necessary variance was not obtained. We had a debate about it. It's a back and forth with the code enforcement officer about whether or not this was required, but seeing that we're here, I did note in the application that reasons why a variance is not required, but based on prior cases, it's probably not worth taking that argument first, and I'll just address the variance. On the other 2 elements of the variance, the board looked favorably on all 5 criteria. Looking at the spirit and intent of the ordinance and the public interest, and looking at the Supreme Court's direction in Farrar versus Keene, those 2 can be satisfied by demonstrating that if the variance is allowed, there will be no substantial change, and I highlight substantial, in the essential character of the neighborhood. This particular neighborhood, you know well, it's well-developed, parking lots, buildings, and so forth. This location is remote. A sign is very important to this particular business, who is facing a lot of challenges through COVID and increased competition, which I believe is good for everybody, but wants to be identified by his customers and future customers. Whether the sign remains at its existing location, where it's been at least since 1996, should not have one iota of impact on the essential character of the neighborhood. Looking at the substantial justice piece, the detriment to the public versus the detriment to the applicant, and doing that balancing test, the applicant went through the process, agreed to keep it at the existing location, which was the preference of both the board and the commentators at that particular time. If he's asked to redesign it and move it, will result in additional costs and additional delay, and he's been several months without a sign now, which has been a hardship to his business. Looking at the value impact, I think we can look at the letters from the prior case that people were generally supportive of it. They like the look and feel of the sign. And the only really issue here is location, that if the variance were granted, there would not be a diminution in value to other property owners. With respect to hardship, you look favorably on the other counts when it was before you. I think the basis there, looking at this land, its remote location, and its lack of visibility, at least from 102, and all of the other signs and the businesses in the area, provided a hardship that was sufficient for those other counts. We would say that hardship would still control here, and the final test would be whether or not this location is reasonable. Having been in that location for over 20 years, without incident or concern, with the applicant giving up on putting it 5 feet closer due to the well-reasoned concerns of abutters and the board, we think keeping it this location is a reasonable request. And would ask that the board look favorably on the variance application. I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Questions from the board? So the 5-foot setback from Orchard View Drive was withdrawn, I believe.
Yes, that was what we were initially seeking, correct.
And so this is different. This is 5 feet from the driveway entrance?
Yeah, that the side street entrance, I believe, is, I'm not still perfectly clear on what the rationale was, where it's at the same location, but we thought the path of least resistance was to file another application and come back and try and clean it up rather than to continue in any type of debate. So it appears to me that both in the zoning review and historically, there may not have been any concern to the driveway or the side street, whatever you want to call it, private drive. Whether in 1996, typically, unfortunately, I was alive and well and had been doing this for a long time in 1996. Typically, it wouldn't have got to the planning board if it violated any of your provisions. The planning board would have said, go and get a variance. I noted from Member Brunel's comment that there was a signed variance and granted in 1996. The planning board looked favorably on that and the location and granted the approval. Second, when we filed the application seeking the 3 elements of relief, typically in the zoning review, it would be called out that, wait a second, you missed something. You've asked for 3, but you really need 4 if you want to go forward. And whether that was oversight on everybody's part, whether that was just a calamity of errors, I don't know. But I think it was pretty well reasoned in our prior hearings that this is the location that everyone wanted it to be. And there was no concerns raised by anyone, including members of the public, with respect to the location to the drive. The issue was the location that we were seeking, being 5 feet from Orchard View Drive. The board may recall between meetings, there was some concern about site distance. If you look at the parking lot, there's a pretty substantial parking lot servicing businesses to the east. And there are a lot of street trees, pretty mature street trees there. So I forget which board member, someone had some relative concern about site distance. We had TF Moran go out and do the counts, and they provided a letter relative to the site distance. Nevertheless, we gave up on moving it closer to Orchard View Drive and said, let's just keep it where it is, and everyone will be happy. Unfortunately, that's not how it worked out.
So, so the previous sign, I mean, you've changed it from when it looked like 3 months ago. You mentioned that you didn't have a sign for a few months, but you do have a sign there now.
But whether the old one went back up or not, I'm not certain.
So Nick, is the case that the exact footprint and everything was 5 foot closer than it should be to the entryway, the entry drive, whatever we're calling it?
No. It's too close to the side property line, not the front. In 96, they were granted a variance to be less than 15 feet from the front. And it was specific on that variance. They didn't mention the side. The site plan from 1996, it was stated right on the site plan that they needed a variance or the sign would have to be removed. That was on the site plan in 1996, and nothing happened. So the sign remained where it is today. So from scaling the plan that I have, it appears that it might meet the 15-foot front setback. If they they'll still need the variance for the side, from the side property line, because they're not 15 feet from their side property line. If you grant this variance for the side property line, you should put a stipulation that it meets the front 15-foot setback.
So get back to my original question then. So it's been there since 96 in this spot.
Right. But in 96, it was stated on the site plan that it was either a variance obtained or it had to be removed.
I'm not sure why granting the side one would impact the front.
Pardon?
So the stipulation that you were suggesting.
Well, because if they meet their setback, they don't need a variance from the front setback. They're required to have one from the side. So we want to just be clear that the sign has to meet the front setback, or they need to apply for a variance for the front setback also.
With due respect, I'd take exception to that condition. We've been here 4 times, I think 4 meetings for a sign, and in fairness to the code enforcement, I know he wasn't involved with this from the beginning and is doing his best to clean things up, and I have no exception with that. But wherever that sign is and has been for the last 20 years, that's where we're going to put it. I think we've already got that relief at the last meeting. I do acknowledge that with respect to the side street or the driveway, and, you know, I don't want to get technical with the driveway. Does the property line go to the center line because it's not a public street or dedicated by an easement? I would just like to get this thing cleaned up and say, can we get the easement from the side to leave it where it is?
So typically we have, I wouldn't say surveyed, but we have something calling out. So no one's gone out there and measured it from any legitimate marker,
Not from the front, no.
front or the side? I mean,
I believe.
I was out there and I saw the markers they had on the side for their sidelines, and it was too close.
okay, so you saw the 10 for the side, but the front,
Right, the front, I couldn't determine because there were no marks for the front boundaries.
so what did we grant back in December? I thought that was for a setback. That was for.
We
withdrew.
withdrew it because.
The whole, oh, you withdrew the whole application? I'm
No,
sorry, I wasn't here.
No, not the whole application. There were 3 elements on the initial application. One was to put it 5 feet from Orchard View Drive. The consensus and direction of the board was, and the public that commented, was leave it where it is. And the discussion was, if we leave it where it is, no variance is required, so pull the application. And that's exactly what was done. You know, if it was needed, we could have kept that in place, and the board would have had discretion to say, hey, we're not going to give it to you to 5 feet, but we'll give it to you to the existing location, which would have saved everyone a lot of time and money, but unfortunately, hindsight is 20/20.
Questions from the board?
Nothing at this time.
Nothing? Nothing? Anybody in the audience with, in favor, opposed, just wants to get up and stretch, say hi? Nothing?
Take a nap.
Back to the board. So if we say that we have to check the Orchard Drive setback and nobody's measured anything, it seems like we're not getting all the information we need every time we sit down here at this table that's really on the applicant.
On what?
The applicant is responsible for giving the board the information we need. We don't have anything with any kind of setbacks. I'm fine going through with this, I guess what are we after, the 5 feet into the side setback, but if we're looking, at Nick's our train of thought is that we should also, we know that it doesn't have a variance for the front setback, so if it's not in compliance there, then is someone going to go out and measure it, and they'll be back here again next week? And so I guess what I'm having trouble is we're seeing a lot of this lately. We're not getting everything we need that is the applicant's responsibility. Drawings and giving us dimensions so we can tell what's in compliance and what's not. And I'm not faulting you, I'm just saying that's why we're still here tonight, and we might be here again if we're concerned about the front setbacks.
Well, in terms of, you asked for those dimensions and drawings, and we provided them back in October, November, of December.
In the other
In
application?
the other application. And in fairness, I don't think the board focused at all on the side issue. I mean, I would ask you to deal with the side issue. I think the front is resolved, and I'll take my chances with respect to that, and I haven't applied tonight for any relief with respect to the front setback. If someone wants to go out and measure it and say we're in violation, I guess I have to look at my options, as you said in an earlier case, but all I'm
Well, I
looking
mean,
for
it's just,
is.
we're getting hit here with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe you did have the information before, but that was all withdrawn. So, yes, Nick?
For them to get a sign permit, if you grant the side variance, then they would have to bring in an accurate map plan showing how far it is off their front property line before they, and if they are 15 feet, then we would grant them the permit. If not, then they'll be back here.
Oh, there we go. All right, let's continue. All right, no more questions from the board. Thank you very much. It seems like this is,
You weren't here last time.
no, I wasn't here for that one, yeah. But it's also this thing where the applicants are consistently not doing a great job of bringing everything we need, and then we continue it, and it makes long hours for everybody. And that's, it's fine, I mean, we come every month, but.
Can I just make a comment in fairness
Sure.
to applicants? I mean, we try and do the best job that we can do to get it done, and a lot of times with deadlines, and we know there's windows. Typically, and I know every community handles it differently, when you submit your application and your fee, my understanding is that fee is for someone to do a zoning review and to say whether it's compliant or whether you have the information or not. You know, in some towns, early on, when I file, they'll say, hey, we're not going to put this on the agenda because we need this plan, or we want a site distance thing. And that's part of the zoning review. So for us to look at it, in fairness, I
No,
get
no,
it.
no,
You
I
get
get
a
it
lot,
because
lot
I-
of incomplete information, so maybe someday, I know at different times I've been in, you look at your rules, or if we put some rules in there, what's really required and accepted, I think it will be more clear for everyone, because you guys have a lot of cases on your agenda, it's time-consuming for you, but for the applicant, it's expensive, it's time-consuming, and they're in a flux while they're waiting. It's
Right.
nobody's fault. It's
No,
just
and that's
a
my
rea-
point.
a
Both
reality.
sides are spending a lot of time and money when it shouldn't be. That's all.
Right.
All right, we got the voting sheet? She has it.
Ready?
Ready.
Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest.
You have a question? You want to go?
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's quick for us, but, I mean, if it's close on the side, right, are we concerned about cars and stuff? Was that?
It's where it's gonna be, it's where it's currently at.
Yeah, okay.
It's already there. It's been there for, again,
No, I was trying to remember what the concern was when we almost dealt with it the last time.
I don't think that we had a concern. I think that the neighbor did, and they withdrew it.
Oh,
and so-
okay.
no, it was the front setback, I think. 'Cause
Oh, okay.
I was planning to come in, but reading the case, it was the front setback. The side wasn't there.
Okay.
And the front, I think that had more to do with some trees needed trimming than worrying about the
And I can-
setback, but.
Mr. Benson was the one that came in, and he was a client of, I think I asked for a continuance, saying I didn't anticipate.
Yes, I was
a
here for the
client, And I had a conflict, so I
Yeah.
had to put the hands up, and I had
Big clients.
the applicant and Mr. Benson got together and said I had to stay out of it and see if you could come to some resolution, and that was to keep the sign where it was, and I believe Mr. Benson then turned in and supported it if it stayed at this location.
Yeah, and I remember being here when you recused it, but I wasn't for the follow-up. All right, so we're ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest.
Would not.
Would not?
I agree.
I agree. Susan?
Yep.
Hasn't been for,
And
doesn't change the
character,
character.
no
yeah.
change in character of the neighborhood.
Word one.
The spirit of the ordinance would or would not be observed.
Would.
Would.
Would. And we have no concerns with health, safety, or welfare. Is that correct?
Considering it's where it currently is.
It has been for a long time, apparently.
Good for your health, isn't it? Workout club?
To get more people in there.
Be a bowling alley.
And a bar room.
Roller skating, right? That too.
JR's, wasn't it?
Granting the variance would or would not do substantial justice?
Would?
Would,
Loss to the applicant is rather than the gain to the public.
thank you. For the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties would or would not be diminished? Would not. We all agree?
Agree.
Same character of the neighborhood.
Commercial area, signs are nice.
Save energy, stop climate change.
Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because there is or is not a fair, substantial, just relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because
He's not.
I agree.
is not.
Because.
Reason?
Corner lot, that works.
Setback property.
Corner lot.
Like there are businesses that are currently existing.
The proposed use is or is not a reasonable one?
Is?
Is. Signs are reasonable. Do we have any comments or restrictions?
So I guess originally we were thinking we'd need a comment on the front, but because when they pulled a permit, that will be checked anyway, we don't need a comment.
They'll need to bring us accurate plot plan showing the location. And if they meet the front setback, fine. If they don't, they'll be back here.
Okay. So we don't need a comment because that's covered one way or
It'll be
the
covered
other.
in that.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for case number 721, 2021-6 to approve the request for a variance from LZO 7.8.b to encroach 5 feet plus or minus into the side setback for the construction of a sign at 18 Orchard View Drive.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Suzanne seconds. Those in favor?
Aye.
Against? The ayes have it.
It's a busy night for your firm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night, thank you.
Thank you.
2 grand variance pass. Okay, any other business?
Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, you're, haven't you read that yet?
7/21/2021-6, request for variance from Londonderry zoning ordinance 7.8B to encroach 15 feet plus or minus into the side setback for the construction of a sign at 18 Orchard View Drive, map 7, lot 40-12, zone C1, STG Associates, Realty Associates, LLC, owner and applicant was approved 5-0.
I think this goes back down there. This was for the other one. Any other communications or miscellaneous? No other news? Any other motions?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to end the ZBA meeting for July 21st, 2021.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Meeting adjourned.